I shouldn't be here. The bar is empty now except for me and the thing behind the counter. I don't know how long I've been trapped, but the clock on the wall keeps resetting to 1:13 a.m. over and over again. The same flickering neon sign, outside. The same cold sweat drip down my spine. And the same bartender standing perfectly still, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. "One more drink?" he asks, voice smooth, polite, wrong. I don't answer. I can't, because I've already seen what happens when I say yes. The bodies, my own body. The way my reflection in the bar mirror doesn't move when I do. I clutch my phone, but the screen is nothing but static now. The exit door, gone. There's only the bar, the bartender, and the feeling that something else is watching. Something that's been waiting for me to make the wrong move. The bartender smiles. "You look tired. How about one for the road?" His hand slides a glass toward me. The liquid inside is black, thick, pulsing like something alive. I know if I drink it, I'll never leave. But I also know if I don't, something much worse is going to happen. Have you ever had one of those nights where everything feels just off? Not in an obvious way, nothing you can point to and say that's weird, but a low crawling feeling in your gut telling you something isn't right? That's how I felt the moment I stepped into O'Malley's bar that night. It was late, too. Late to be drinking alone, but I had nowhere else to go. My week had been shit, my job was circling the drain, and the last thing I wanted was to go back to my cramped, silent apartment. So I found myself here, drowning my stress in whiskey, surrounded by the low murmur of drunken conversations and clinking glasses. O'Malley's wasn't anything special. A dimly lit hole in the wall, nestled between an abandoned laundromat and a boarded-up pawn shop. The kind of place that always felt stuck in time, like it hadn't changed in decades. Dark wooden booths, a jukebox that only played songs from the 80s, and a bartender who looked like he'd been here forever. I didn't know his name. None of us did. We just called him Jack. Jack never talked much. He wasn't friendly, but he wasn't rude either. Just there. Always cleaning a glass, always watching. You'd order a drink, and he'd give it to you without a word, his face unreadable. Some people swore they'd been coming here for years and he looked exactly the same. Never aged, never changed. I remember thinking that was a stupid rumor. But then again, the whole place felt strange. Tonight, the air was thick, stale. The light seemed dimmer than usual, casting weird, stretched-out shadows on the floor. And the people. Something about them unsettled me. At first glance, it was just the usual crowd. A couple arguing in the corner booth. A man nursing a beer, staring blankly at the TV above the bar. A woman in a red dress swirling her cocktail, the ice clinking against the glass. But the longer I sat there, the less real they felt. Like props in a stage play, frozen in the same positions every time I looked up. The arguing couple never seemed to move past their hushed, angry whispers. The man at the bar hadn't blinked in what felt like hours. And the woman in the red dress? I realized she had been swirling her drink in the exact same motion since I walked in. Around me, the conversations were muffled like hearing voices through water. The music from the jukebox was low, distorted, almost like it was playing in reverse. I rubbed my temples, trying to shake the feeling. Maybe I was just overtired. Maybe the whiskey was hitting me harder than usual. Then I glanced at my phone. 1:13 a.m. I frowned. That couldn't be right. It had been 1:13 a.m. when I last checked, and the time before that. I locked and unlocked the screen. Still, 1:13 a.m. A cold prickle ran down my spine. My phone wasn't frozen. It still let me swipe, check messages, open apps, but the time wouldn't change. I turned to the bartender. "Hey Jack, what time you got?" I asked, forcing a chuckle. "My phone's acting weird." Jack didn't answer right away. He just kept polishing the glass, slow and deliberate. Then, without looking up, he said, "Time doesn't move the same way in here." I blinked. "What?" Jack said, the glass down. His face was as blank as ever, but something in his eyes was wrong. "Another drink?" I hesitated. The whiskey in front of me was still half full, but before I could say no, he was already pouring. The liquid sloshed into the glass. thicker than it should have been, almost syrupy. "On the house," Jack murmured. I didn't touch it. Something in me was screaming now, telling me to leave. But when I turned toward the exit, my stomach dropped. The door was gone. I swear, it had been right there when I walked in. A rusty old door with a flickering green exit sign above it. Now, just a stretch of brick wall, as if the door had never existed. My heart pounded. I turned back to the room. The people were gone. The arguing couple vanished. The man at the bar, gone. Even the woman in the red dress, her drink still sat there. The ice half melted, but she was nowhere to be seen. The bar was silent now. Just me and Jack. My pulse hammered against my skull. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, my voice unsteady. Jack tilted his head. His lips curled into something that was almost a smile, but wrong. Like he was trying to remember how expressions worked. "You should drink," he said. "It helps." I pushed the glass away. My hands were sweating. Where did everyone go? Jack just stared. And then, the mirror behind the bar flickered. Not a reflection. A flicker, like an old VHS tape skipping. For half a second I saw something else in the mirror. Myself, but not myself. The other, me, was sitting in the same stool, wearing the same clothes, holding the same drink. But his eyes, they were wrong. Dark, empty pits. And behind him, behind me, something loomed in the shadows, its shape shifting, writhing, watching. Then, just as fast it was gone, the bar was normal again. The mirror only showed me. Jack leaned in. "Drink," he whispered. "It's the only way you leave." My breath hitched. I shoved away from the bar, heart racing, scanning the room for another exit. But there was none. Just the bar. The endless bottles of liquor lining the walls, and Jack. And then, a sharp scraping sound, like a chair dragging across the floor. Slow, deliberate. I turned, my blood turning to ice. There, at the far end of the bar, sat the man who had been drinking earlier. The one who hadn't blinked. Except now, he was staring directly at me. His face was wrong. Stretched. His mouth too wide. His eyes too hollow. He opened his lips, as if to speak. But all that came out was static. My hands clenched into fists. I had to get out of here. I turned back to Jack, my throat dry. "Tell me how to leave." Jack's expression didn't change. "You already know." I swallowed hard, looking down at the drink he had poured for me. The thick black liquid still pulsed inside the glass like something alive. The man at the far end of the bar let out a low, distorted laugh. And somewhere deep in the dark corners of the room, something moved. I didn't touch the drink. Every instinct in me screamed not to. It just sat there on the bar, black and pulsing like it was breathing. I looked back at the man at the end of the bar. He was still grinning, his mouth stretched too wide, teeth too straight, too perfect. The sound coming from his throat wasn't breathing, it wasn't talking, it was just static. Jack didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't care. I needed to get out. Now. "Where's the exit?" I demanded, my voice lower than I intended. Jack tilted his head, his face impassive. "You're looking in the wrong places." "That doesn't mean anything," I snapped, but my voice wavered. Jack sighed, as if I had disappointed him. Then, without another word, he reached below the bar and set something down in front of me. A key. It was old, rusted, its handle shaped, like an eye. The moment it hit the wooden counter, I felt it. Something wrong. I didn't pick it up. Jack nodded toward the back of the bar. "There's a door in the storage room." I swallowed. That was impossible. I'd been here dozens of times. There was no door in the storage room, just a wall lined with shelves. But right now, logic didn't matter. My only choice was forward. I took the key. It was ice cold. Behind me, the static sound grew louder. I didn't look back. I slid off my stool, my legs feeling strangely weak, and walked toward the back of the bar. As I passed the tables, I noticed something else. The drinks were still there. The glasses sat untouched, condensation slowly dripping down their sides. But their owners were gone. Or maybe they had never left. The hallway leading to the storage room was darker than I remembered. The yellow light overhead flickered, buzzing like an angry wasp. The air grew thick, humid, almost sticky against my skin. With each step, something inside me whispered, "Don't go in." But I did. The storage room was small, cramped with boxes of liquor stacked high against the walls. I moved carefully, my breath shallow, scanning the dim space for a door that shouldn't exist. And then, there it was, at the very back behind an old metal shelf, a door. I stopped. My pulse pounded in my throat. I had been in this storage room countless times. This door had never been here before. It was wooden, old, with a tarnished brass handle. The same eye-shaped emblem as the key was carved into its surface. Something was breathing on the other side. I froze. The sound was deep, slow, almost like someone sleeping, but there was something off about it, like whoever was on the other side wasn't quite human. I should have turned around. I should have walked right back to the bar, demanding another way out. But instead, my fingers tightened around the key. I didn't want to open it, but something wanted me to. The moment the key slipped into the lock, my ears popped, like I had been yanked underwater. The storage room went silent. No buzzing light. No hum of the refrigerator units. No sound from the bar outside. Just a void. The key turned with an unnatural click. And then, a whisper. Not from behind the door. From behind me. I spun around. Nothing. But the whisper was still there. It was soft, curling around the edges of my hearing. A language I didn't understand but somehow knew was meant for me. I took a step back. My legs felt wrong, like the ground beneath me had tilted ever so slightly. The whispering grew, multiplying, overlapping, voices speaking too fast, too slow, some close, some impossibly distant. And then, the door creaked open on its own. Not much, just an inch, just enough to see. A sliver of blackness. Not the kind of darkness you see when the lights are off. Something deeper. A darkness that felt like it was watching me back. A hand shot through the gap. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The breath in my lungs turned to ice. The hand wasn't human. Too many joints, too many fingers, long and gnarled like tree roots. The skin was wrong, shifting between textures, leathery, smooth, cracked, wet, like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to be. The fingers twitched, searching, and then they reached for my face. I stumbled back, slamming into a stack of boxes. The whispering surged, turning into a deafening roar, voices spilling from the open door, speaking inside my head. The fingers stretched, coming closer, and then, just as suddenly, they snapped back. The hand retreated, the door slammed shut, on its own, and the room went silent. I stood there shaking, my back pressed against the cold concrete wall. My breath came in ragged gasps. Slowly, I turned toward the door. The key, still in the lock, was melting. Thick, black liquid dripped from the handle, seeping into the floorboards. It smelled like burnt hair. I backed away. My legs felt like jelly. I needed to get out. Now. I turned and bolted back into the bar, my shoes slamming against the floor. Jack was still there. The man at the end of the bar was still there, but something had changed. Jack looked up at me. His face was paler now. His eyes were too dark, like the pupils had swallowed the irises. "You saw it," he murmured. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The static man let out a slow, gurgling laugh. Jack sighed and reached under the counter again. He pulled out another drink. This one was worse. The liquid inside was thick, oily, shifting like it was filled with thousands of tiny moving things. "You should drink," Jack said softly. "It'll make it easier." I shook my head. I want to leave. Jack just smiled. The door is gone. I turned. He was right. Where the entrance had been was now just a wall of old, cracked bricks. No door, no exit, and in the mirror behind the bar, my reflection was still facing the storage room, but I was looking the other way. And then, it turned its head to look at me. My reflection shouldn't have moved. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a glitch in the old mirror behind the bar. But then, it blinked. I wasn't blinking. I stumbled back, knocking over a bar stool. My heart pounded against my ribs. Jack didn't react. The man at the end of the bar didn't move. In the mirror, my reflection smiled, a slow, unnatural smile, stretching wider than my own mouth ever could. Then, its lips moved. "You shouldn't have opened the door." A whisper. But the lips in the mirror weren't just forming the words, they were saying them. And I didn't hear them with my ears. I heard them inside my head. I turned away from the mirror, gripping the edge of the bar to steady myself. What the hell is going on? My voice barely sounded like my own. Jack sighed, wiping the counter as if this were just another night. "You're seeing things differently now, aren't you?" I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry. "I need to leave." Jack didn't stop me. He simply gestured toward the brick wall where the entrance had been, as if daring me to try. I ran toward it anyway, hands shaking as I pressed against the rough bricks. Solid, real. There was no door, no way out. I turned, panic clawing up my throat. "There was a door! I just came through it!" Jack only tilted his head. "Are you sure?" The words hit something deep inside me, something I couldn't explain. Was I sure? I had walked into this bar, right? I had entered through that door. So why couldn't I remember the moment I stepped inside? I tried to focus, to retrace my steps in my mind. I'd come in after work? No, maybe before. I'd been somewhere else before this. I was sure of it, but I couldn't remember where. I clenched my jaw. No, this was a trick, a mind game. I turned toward Jack again. "Let me out." He stared at me for a long moment. Then, finally, he spoke. "You can leave," he said. "But first, you have to finish your drink." I looked at the glass in front of me. The liquid inside had changed. It was no longer black. It had turned red, thick, almost pulsing. I knew instinctively that it wasn't wine. I stepped back. "I'm not drinking that." Jack shrugged. "Then you stay." I clenched my fists. My breath came sharp, uneven. Something was watching me. Not Jack, not the static man, something else. I felt it, crawling along the edges of my vision, shifting behind the walls, slipping beneath the floorboards. I looked back at the mirror. My reflection was still smiling. And now, it wasn't alone. There were others. Figures standing just behind me, their faces blurred, their eyes black voids. I spun around. Nothing was there. My pulse pounded in my ears. I was losing it. I turned back to Jack. "What is this place?" Jack sighed again, as if tired of my questions. "It's a bar." I shook my head. No, it's not." Jack studied me. Then, he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You opened the wrong door," he said. My stomach twisted. I didn't want to ask, but I had to. "What do you mean?" Jack tapped the bar with a single finger, a slow, deliberate rhythm. "That door," he said. "It doesn't lead out." I swallowed. My throat burned. "It lets things in." The air in the bar shifted. The walls cracked, like something was pressing against them from the other side. And then, the whispers returned, not just from the mirror this time, from everywhere. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block them out. But they weren't just voices now. They were memories, not mine. Flashes of things I had never seen. People sitting in this very bar, staring at drinks they didn't want to drink. Faces twisted in silent horror. Some were crying, some were laughing. Too wide, too unnatural. Then, one by one, they disappeared. The images flickered in and out like a broken film reel, each person vanishing in a different way. Some faded into static. Some were dragged away by hands that came from nowhere. Some simply blinked out of existence, as if they had never been there at all. My eyes snapped open. I was gasping for air. Jack was watching me, unimpressed. "You're starting to remember," he said. I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. "What the hell is this place?" I whispered. Jack only smiled. "A bar." The moral dilemma came next. Jack gestured toward the drink again. The thick red liquid inside shimmered under the dim light. "You want to leave? You drink." I shook my head. "I told you," Jack interrupted. "Not that one." My breath caught. He reached beneath the bar and pulled out another glass. This one was clear, and inside, it looked normal. Just a simple glass of water. Cold. Harmless. Jack slid it toward me. I stared at it. My entire body was screaming at me to take it. But something inside me whispered, "It's a trick." Jack leaned in, his voice soft. "One of these lets you go. One of these keeps you here." The static man chuckled at the end of the bar. I looked at the two drinks. One was obviously wrong. One looked fine. But that was the trick, wasn't it? Jack tilted his head. "Make a choice." I hesitated, and then the whispers spoke again. This time, they said my name. I whipped around. The mirror behind the bar was filled with people now. Hundreds of them. Some were screaming, some were whispering, some were begging. All of them had once been me, trapped here, forced to make this same choice. Some had chosen wrong. Their faces were stretched, distorted, twisted into something no longer human. I turned back to Jack. My hands trembled. The drinks sat before me. One led to freedom. One led to something much worse. Jack smiled. "Drink." I reached forward and chose. I tipped the glass forward. The liquid shimmered as it touched my lips. Cold, tasteless. Water. It was just water. For a fleeting moment, I thought I had made the right choice. Then, a sound. Low. Wet. Like something breathing through gutted lungs. I froze. The glass still in my hand. My throat tightened. Behind me, the mirror darkened. Not like the lights. Dimming. Like something was pulling the color from the world itself. I turned. And there it was. A figure. It stood within the mirror, towering, twisting. Its shape flickered, refusing to settle. Arms stretched longer than they should. Bones cracked in ways that weren't human. It had no face. Only a gaping, black void, darker than the space around it. And yet, I felt it looking at me. My chest locked. My body screamed, "Move," but my limbs wouldn't obey. Then, it took a step forward, not in the mirror, into the room. The glass didn't shatter. It simply melted around it, absorbing the creature like liquid. My breath hitched. The walls groaned, stretching inward, the entire bar shrinking as the thing stepped closer. Jack sighed, placing a fresh glass on the counter. "Looks like you picked wrong." No, I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. The static man at the end of the bar chuckled, the same dry, rasping laugh. He was enjoying this. I turned to Jack, my voice barely a whisper. "Let me go." Jack tilted his head. "There is no go." The thing took another step. I scrambled, back, knocking over a stool, my breath ragged. The wooden floor beneath me felt softer now, like flesh. I shouldn't have come here. The entity tilted its head, and I heard the sound of bones grinding. Then, it spoke. "You always say that." My stomach dropped. The voice. It wasn't coming from the thing. It was coming from inside me. I staggered back. "What? What do you mean?" The lights flickered, and suddenly, the bar wasn't the same. The chairs were in different places. The bottles behind Jack had changed. The door was back. I gasped. There it was, the exit. I turned, sprinting toward it. My pulse slammed in my ears. I reached out, fingers brushing the handle. The world lurched. I was back at the bar, standing exactly where I had been before. The glass still in my hand. No, that's not possible. I turned again. The door was gone. The creature was closer now. Jack sighed, cleaning the same spot on the counter. You never learn. I backed away. What the hell is happening? Jack's expression remained calm. You've been here before. I shook my head. That's not true. Jack just chuckled. Are you sure? The words sent a deep, sickening shudder through me. Because I wasn't sure. Not anymore. The memories, the flashes of people trapped here before me, the whispers in my own voice. This had all happened before. I had been here before. The realization ripped through me like a blade. Jack leaned on the bar. You open the wrong door, you end up here. And then you play the game. I tried to swallow, but my throat burned. What game? Jack nodded at the two glasses in front of me. One lets you go, one doesn't. My hands trembled. I had already picked one. I had already lost. Jack shrugged. Then we reset. The loop. Oh God, the loop. The whispers filled my head again. Voices of my past selves. Drink, drink, drink. I turned to the creature. It had stopped moving. It simply waited, as if it knew the game better than I did. Jack slid a fresh drink toward me. It was clear. Water. Or at least, it looked like water. Jack smirked. Maybe this time you'll choose right. My entire body shook. I turned toward the mirror. The faces inside were watching, hundreds of them. All versions of me, and none of them were smiling. I faced Jack. If I don't drink? Jack nodded toward the creature. Then it takes you. The thing's head twitched, its neck bending at an unnatural angle. I squeezed my eyes shut. If I drank, I might reset. If I didn't, I might die. Or worse, become one of them. My chest heaved. This was the choice. The same choice I had made before. I opened my eyes, staring down at the glass. My reflection rippled in it. And then, just before I lifted it to my lips, my reflection whispered, "This is where you always get it wrong." My stomach plummeted. Wait, the rules. Jack wanted me to drink. The creature waited for me to drink. But what if the way out wasn't drinking at all? What if the only way to break the loop was to refuse? Jack's smirk faded. Time's running out. The creature shuddered, something inside it clicking, twisting, breaking. I stared at the drink. I took a deep breath. And then, I did the one thing I had never done before. I pushed the glass away. Jack blinked. The creature lurched forward. The walls collapsed inward. And then, everything shattered, like a mirror breaking from the inside. The bar, gone. Jack, gone. The thing, gone. And I was falling. End of section. Next up, horror climax. 2,000 words. This next section will be the most intense part, where we reveal the final twist and what happens now that the protagonist has broken the loop, or thinks they have. I was falling. The bar had shattered, the world collapsing into a swirling abyss of black and gray. My stomach lurched, wind whipping past my ears as I tumbled through empty space. No sky, no ground, no walls, just endless nothingness. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for impact, but there was none. I simply stopped. No floor beneath me, no sense of weight, just floating, suspended in the void. Then, a voice, low, familiar. "You think you won?" My blood froze. I opened my eyes, and I was back in the bar. No, that wasn't possible. I had broken the loop. The stools were lined up. The shelves behind the counter were stocked. The neon sign flickered above. And Jack was there polishing a glass, just like before. I staggered back. My pulse slammed in my ears. "You're lying," I whispered. "I got out." Jack smirked. "You think you got out?" The walls pulsed, the ceiling lights flickering. Then I saw it, the door, wide open. The cold night air seeped in, carrying the distant sounds of traffic, life, reality. I didn't think. I ran. My legs burned, my lungs screamed, but I sprinted toward the exit. Each step felt like moving through molasses. Slower, heavier. Jack sighed behind me. "You really don't get it, do you?" I ignored him, reaching for the door, 10 feet away. 5. I lunged, and the world ripped apart. Not the bar, me. My body convulsed, my vision splitting. 1,000 versions of myself fractured, each caught in different moments. Some of them were still sitting at the bar. Some of them were drinking. Some were screaming. And then I saw it. The worst part. I had been here before, not just once, hundreds of times. Flashes of memories slammed into me. Different clothes, different years, different lives. But always, this same bar. Always me, sitting here, making the choice. My mind cracked under the weight of it. I stumbled forward, collapsing to my knees. "No," I whimpered. "This isn't real." Jack crouched in front of me, resting his elbows on his knees. "You chose this," he said softly. I shook my head. No, I didn't." Jack sighed. "You did. Every time." And then he stepped aside, revealing the mirror behind the bar. I shouldn't have looked, but I did, and I saw myself. Not my reflection. Them. The others. Versions of me, twisted and ruined. Some had hollowed out eyes, some had rotting skin, some had no mouth left to scream. And one was smiling, not at me, at something behind me. I turned. The creature stood there. But it wasn't waiting anymore. It was reaching out. Toward me. I tried to move, but my limbs felt anchored, and then the whispers became screams. From the mirror. From the bar. From inside my own head. Jack stood, tossing the rag over his shoulder. "It's funny," he mused. "You always think this is the first time." I felt it then, the truth settling in my bones like ice. There was no escape. I hadn't broken the loop. I had just stepped into the next one. I opened my mouth to scream, and then everything went black. Clink. The sound of a glass hitting the counter. I blink. My hands are resting on smooth wood. The air is thick with the scent of old whiskey and cigarette smoke. A neon light hums faintly above. I am sitting at the bar. Wait. No, I was just... My head throbs. My thoughts feel scattered like pages torn from a book. I glance around. The stools, the shelves are lined with bottles. The faint murmur of a jukebox playing a song I almost recognize. A man sits at the far end of the bar, staring blankly ahead. I know him. No, I've seen him before. But before I can speak, a voice cuts through my thoughts. Rough night. I turn. Jack is standing behind the counter, polishing a glass. The air freezes in my lungs. I know that rag. I know this moment. I swallow hard. Where am I? Jack smirks. Same place as always. I look down. There are 2 glasses in front of me. One filled with water, one filled with something else. I feel sick. I lift a trembling hand to my head. My skin feels wrong, like I don't belong in it. Jack watches me carefully. "You ready to choose?" he asks. I stare at the drinks. A whisper curls at the edges of my mind, something familiar, distant. This isn't right. I've been here before. I've done this before. The man at the end of the bar laughs softly. The neon light above flickers. I try to remember how I got here, but my thoughts feel like they're slipping through my fingers. Jack nudges the glasses toward me. "You never learn," he says. My heart pounds. I open my mouth to scream, to beg, to demand answers. And then I hear it. A voice, my own voice, coming from behind me. "This is where you always get it wrong." My stomach plummets. I turn, but there's no one there. Just the mirror behind the bar. Hundreds of faces stare back at me. All of them. Me. Some broken, some hollow, some watching, waiting. Jack sighs, placing his hands on the counter. "Well?" I stare at the glasses. A choice. The same choice. Like always. My hands shake. I reach forward, and then darkness.